What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. If you're new around here, welcome to the show. My name is Jared Hamilton, and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I have a very special guest for you. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how my client Anna went from struggling with food noise, binge eating multiple times per week, feeling out of control around food, and needing to lose weight. And then on the other side of just a few short months, she's changed everything. Her food noise is gone. Her weight is down. Her clothes fit. Her muscles are tone defined. Her cellulite is gone. And her relationship with food is amazing. And she finally feels normal and peaceful around food. She's done everything that everyone wants to become free around food, feel like a normal person, and step into the body of her dreams. So that is what we're talking about in today's episode, and how we were able to do it in such a short period of time, how she went from struggling for years to less than a year, fixed all of this stuff on the other side, and do what she even felt was impossible. So I know you'll love today's episode. I know you'll get a lot out of it, and I will go get Anna. I'll talk to you very soon. Let's do this. Tell me a little bit more, talk a little bit about where your situation was at before joining the program, like the before of everything.
So before joining the program, I guess I'll kind of start since in high school, I was like 120 pounds, right? But at the time I was also like in so many sports, and it was so much like running and weightlifting. I would do like 2 hours of strength training a day, and we would run a 5K for a warm up, so being 120 pounds obviously makes sense because, I kind of ate what I wanted, but the like physical activity level was so high, and then after I graduated, I had an office job. So my weight just slowly over time went up and up and up. And after, it hit like 170, 180, then I would diet my way back down to 120, 130. So I would get there, and then I hit 120 and I realized I don't like the way that I look. I look really sick because you could see like my ribs and like all the bones in my spine. And I realized at that point, 120 is just not something that makes sense for me anymore. So, and for whatever reason, instead of trying to maintain that weight, I just stopped paying attention to my weight. And over the course of a couple years, at one point, I got up to like 220 pounds, and then I worked my way back down to like 140, and I stayed there for a little while. But then, life got busy, and I just kind of went back to eating whatever, not really working out. So, I was working my way back up, and I hit 170, and I was like, okay, I obviously, there's a disconnect happening. And I actually saw an ad for like one of your courses on the Lose It, the calorie tracker. And I remember looking at it, and I thought it sounded really interesting because even though my weight has always fluctuated, one thing that I've always worked on is like going to therapy and looking for help, like, trying to work on myself as a person. But I never really connected the dots as far as changing your mindset when it comes to food and how it could impact, your weight. I didn't really think of, I never really considered the fact that you have a relationship, with food, or that your relationship with yourself affects that. So, I started listening to your podcast, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of interested. And then at one point, you reached out, and I was like, I don't have time. I'll do it in a couple of months. And like, if we're being real, like, things just got worse, and it's like I joined the program and it's been so helpful. But realistically, if you would have reached out to me in a couple months, I would have been like, no, I'm, struggling more than I was then. I'm definitely not doing it because I can't, but it's funny because, I know like when we did the initial call, we were talking about, I believe that things happen for a reason, and I believe in things aligning on purpose. So I, made the leap and I joined the program, and I feel like I'm able to handle things easier now because I'm not so worried about my weight. Like last year, I ended up having to put my dog down because he had cancer, and it was so stressful. And I remember thinking one of the worst things, I mean, obviously it was terrible that he died because it was still young, but I was still obsessed with my weight, and I was so worried about trying to, lose weight and stay within my calories. And I'm like, my dog is literally dying. Why is this still, one of the top things that I'm worried about? And I wanted to get to a point where I don't want it to be such a big stressor that I can't handle life events without it being at the top of the list. So, that's kind of how all of that, I guess, tied in to me, like saying yes and just making that leap of
Yeah.
faith to join the program.
I love that. I love it. Now for you, talk a little bit about like where the struggles that you were having, like what was the biggest struggles and frustrations you had before? I know if I remember right, like when we first started talking, it was like there was the binge eating, there was the yo-yo dieting, the weight gain, the food noise, all the stuff from like childhood about food. Talk
Yeah.
about some of that stuff.
So I feel like I've had a little bit of all of the problems that you talk about, because I remember, hearing one of your advertisements or hearing it a podcast, or even it might have even been on Instagram where you said, you know, what would you do if you could solve your food noise within 6 months? I was like, well, that would be, fine and dandy, but I've got like these 20 other things that are like a huge issue, but it's interesting because, the steps that I've taken is kind of like apply to all of the food issues that I've
Mm,
had. Because there were times where with my job, I don't really have time to stop and eat. So when I would leave the house in the mornings, I wouldn't typically grab anything to eat, just have like drinks. And I would pretty much just, drink monsters all day while I'm working because I drive in the car, and the only stops I really make are at gas stations. And I was just like, I'm not eating anything from a gas station. And so then I would come home and then I would be famished. And that's where a lot of the issue would start because I was so hungry that I would go into the kitchen and immediately whatever I could find, I would just start eating it. And
mm,
then I had my nice, plan set out with different programs that I was doing where they want you to, cook these meals, but by the time I'm done working and I haven't eaten all day, cooking was the last thing on my mind. So a lot of times I would just go ahead and order DoorDash or Uber Eats. And, I had a really bad day, so I deserve to eat bad. And, I'm not going to worry about my calorie budget because I had a really bad day, and then so I would eat all of the food, and then it's like you're sitting down and you're looking around at all the trash and you're like, what did I do? What happened? How did I get to this point? And then it's like, I would spiral because later on I would feel even worse. And then I would go through my kitchen, especially like the pantry and the freezer. And there was times where I felt like a bear, just whatever was in there that I could eat, even if I didn't necessarily want it. And sometimes even if it was expired, I would eat it because my emotions were just way out of control, and
mm,
there was times where, it's like, you really I would crave specific foods, but then I wouldn't eat them because they're not part of the diet plan that this, random influencer gave me. And then I would have these plans where they wanted you to eat like every 2 to 3 hours, but with my lifestyle, I can't take a salad and try to eat it in the car. I can't eat like a bowl of couscous in the car while I'm driving and, having to work. And it's just, you know, so I feel like there was a lot of times where I let my weird kind of lifestyle and the way that I specifically need to eat, I let it hold me back from, you know, from finding a plan that worked for me. And I just figured, well, with as busy as I am, I'm just never going to find a plan that works for me, and I felt like a lot of that kind of had to do with all or nothing thinking, because even on the days off where I'm home all day, I was like, oh, it's my first day off. I should celebrate with, like 5,000 calories from Domino's, because that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's just, the binge eating, the overeating, and just especially emotional eating. I really think that a lot of the food noise that I had, it was me emotionally eating, because I realized that any of the major feelings that I had, and not just negative feelings, even positive feelings, there were times where I would feel very, very happy, but I noticed it was kind of weird, because I almost felt like I had to suppress those feelings. And my way of doing that was eating so much food that the feelings aren't even registering anymore, because I'm just so full, and that was my way of, like, I wasn't letting myself feel feelings. If I even felt like a tinge of sadness or stress, then I would eat until I was sick to my stomach, and now that's all I can feel, So
Yeah, that makes total sense. I see that a lot where it's almost like your nervous system wants you to just be numb. If we're sad or feeling negative, well, let's distract with food. But if we're feeling good and happy, we need to distract too, because we don't want to get hurt and get our high too high. So, like, let's just be numb and be okay. Right?
Exactly. So,
for you, what was like the deciding factor though? Like when you said, you know what, I'm deciding this is what I want to do. What made you decide to join?
I think it was because when we were talking about it, I was very, I guess, distrustful, because I've done so many other workout programs that seem like, they would have helped, but my lifestyle didn't really let those plans fit in. Just either because the grocery list was really expensive. Like I said, I can't eat in the car. But then when I was talking to you, I remember kind of trying to feel you out as far as like what the meal plan was going to be, and the way that, you had it set up, you just basically said that you don't really have like a meal plan, more like guidelines. And it sounded like, okay, this might actually be something that I can fit into my lifestyle, and then I remember you talking, I think probably the thing that might have really made me feel like, okay, this is the thing I want to sign up for. You were talking about building framework, and you basically said that we have to, make sure the foundation and the frame of the house is solid before moving forward. And I definitely felt like, okay, this is something that is going to help actually tackle the issue, because I know how to lose weight. I know what a deficit is. Like, I track my calories very well. I know how to do the movement. I know how, and it's exhausting going to these different diet programs, and they're like, oh, all you have to do is eat 1,400 calories. It's like, yeah, I know that, but, why can't I do it? Why am I just like destined to just never be able to be at, a healthy weight? But I knew that there was underlying issues. I just didn't know how to fix it. And so when you were talking about fixing the framework, I was like, I have no idea what the framework around the food is. And maybe that's my problem. Maybe it's that there is something huge that I am just missing. And it's not because, I'm less than, it's not because I'm not capable. It's not because of like my lifestyle, but literally nobody in my family that is like my parents or my grandparents have been able to have like a healthy relationship with food, and it's like everybody in my family is obsessed with diet culture and losing weight, and fad diets. And, anytime they're off the diet though, immediately back to eating like, 5,000 calories at a family gathering, and it's like even the people in my family that lose weight, it's kind of like me where it's always up and down, up and down. And the only way that any of us have ever like stayed at a consistent weight is like the people in my family that do the, like the bikini competitions, like
Right.
I can't think of what they're called right now.
Like the figure and stuff of bodybuilding.
Yeah, and it's like behind closed doors, seeing what it takes for them to get there, and then seeing how they are in the off season, and then like with my mom, even before she was doing these like bodybuilding type competitions, she's always struggled with her weight, and me and my siblings went along with her when she did Weight Watchers, quick weight loss, like, just all these different programs that she could to try to manage her weight, and so again, it's like for me, I just felt like there's knowledge out there that we just don't have. And, after talking to you and listening to the podcast and everything, I felt like, okay, this is speaking to me on a level that nothing else has, and I've always, I always tell people, I think everybody needs to go to therapy, even if it's just for a little while. I feel like there's always something that you can improve on. And so, I feel like it applies to your relationship with food, but I feel like it's kind of like with therapy, or kind of like even having a car. You know how to drive the car, you know how it functions, you know how to put gas in it, but what are you going to do when your alternator goes out? You might know because someone else has taught you how, but a lot of times you take it to a mechanic, and the mechanic will fix it for you. Or it's even like if you wanted to do something like change the oil, you either take it to someone who knows how to do it and they'll do it for you, or you can have them teach you. You can have them give you the tools and show you how to do it, so you can work on the car and change your oil yourself. And it's kind of like, with therapy and with my relationship with food. It's like I want to, but I didn't have the proper tools to approach it in a way that's sustainable.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I love that. That's such a great analogy. Now, for you, as far as like some of the, let's talk a little bit about the transformation that's happened, because you've had a lot happen, like your relationship with food, how you handle stress physically, like actual fat loss and all of that stuff. So talk about how much the transformation and the pieces that have stood out to you and things like that.
I think one of the things that has stood out to me the most is with the calorie budget and the protein goals that you've given me specifically. It's really nice to be eating, 2,000 calories a day, because, it's so easy for an app to be like, oh, if you want to lose weight, just eat 1,200 calories a day. It's like, okay, well, duh, I know that, but it's not easy. It's not sustainable. And it's not something that I want for myself anymore. I want better for myself. And now that I'm eating, 2,000 calories a day, and I'm trying to hit my protein goal every day also, I've started drinking protein shakes in the morning. They're pre-made. I don't even have to use them in a blender. I just buy the ones from Chobani, because they have some where it's like 30 grams of protein and like 200 calories. So I'll drink that in the morning before I leave the house, and the entire day that I'm driving or, that I'm working, I don't get hungry until, later on in the afternoon. And if I'm still out working, then I'll just have like, like beef jerky, or like either even like the Kodiak bars that, I'll just keep stuff like that in my car that has protein that will keep me full, that won't melt in the car, that I'm not going to get into an accident trying to eat. And then by the time I'm home, I'm not famished, so I actually have the energy because I've been eating, and I'm not starving and like literally shaking. So it's easier for me to sit down and think, okay, here is where I am on my nutrition goals for today. What do I want to eat for lunch? And then even at the end of the day, one of my goals, is to eat like the 300 to 500 calories of, like my favorite foods, which is like, the donuts or, the big bag of chips or whatever. Like for me, it's always donuts. Like I love donuts so much. And I will literally go to one of my favorite donut places. I could eat 3 donuts in one day and still come in at 450 of my, I still have 50 to spare, or I can go to the gas station. If I don't want beef jerky, then I'll get like the little 6-pack of chocolate frosted donuts, and they're anywhere from like 400 to 450 calories, and I feel so much happier when I'm eating the donuts because I don't feel guilty anymore. I just feel like I can eat these and enjoy them. And there's like even sitting and feeling that enjoyment is just so much nicer because when I would buy the little chocolate frosted donuts or even when I would go to the donut shop and, I'm going to eat like a dozen donuts instead of just 3. Or when I would go to the gas station and buy the chocolate frosted ones, I would buy the family size bag and half of it would be gone by the time I got home. And then on top of that, because of my bad binge eating cycles, I would be like, instead of just getting 3, I was like, well, I'm eating donuts. I'm going to blow my budget. So shaky, and I would have like sugar highs and then crashes, and all of that is gone though. It's completely balanced out, and I don't have times where I feel like I'm starving anymore, so I'm just balanced all day long. And at the end of the day, if I am craving a snack, it's a lot easier to eat something that fits in that 300 to 500 calories. But when I do my workouts too, I feel a lot stronger during them. So I'm not as afraid to push myself.
So talk a little bit about like the actual changes you've experienced with your body and your relationship with food. Because I love the strategies, love the tactics, but like as far as the outcomes that have happened, like with your food relationship with food, binge eating, your clothes fitting, talk about all that stuff.
So I feel as far as like my relationship with food, I don't have like the random cravings as often. Like, I still sometimes think, oh, I want a donut, but that's the difference. Sure. I want a donut, not a dozen of donuts, because I'm allowed to eat them more often. And then so whenever I go to parties, they used to be a huge source of stress whenever I was dieting. So a lot of times I just wouldn't go. And a lot of it was because I didn't know what they were going to serve. And I just knew that I was going to completely blow my diet. So, I just won't see my friends until I'm done dieting, like, because that makes so much sense, right? So I don't let my relationship with food hold me back in that way anymore. But whenever I'm exercising, I actually feel strong during it. I feel confident enough to to push myself hard. And I feel like in the past I was more reserved when it came to my workouts because, I've already eaten 1,200 calories today and, I've only got 200 calories left and I already feel like crap. So I wouldn't push in my workouts because I didn't want to, end up burning up all this energy and then I only had 200 calories left for the day. Or there was times where I would just skip the workout because I already knew it was going to make me feel like crap on top of, not having very many calories to eat. So, but like physically for my changes, like even just looking, I used to have a really bad like double chin. And I feel, everybody has skin here. It's common, but I feel like just looking head on into the camera, a lot of times I would have like a lower, it would be lower, Mm-hmm. And even like on my side profile, I feel like it's gotten slimmer. And then when I gain a lot of weight, when I smile, like my smile lines go away, but see, they're coming back.
Look at that.
Hmm.
Look at that.
Yeah, so the smile lines came back, and like my arms, I feel like they're thinner. So there's times where when I wear like t-shirts, I would feel uncomfortable because, you have like kind of that jiggle. And I mean, it's loose skin and I'm not flexing obviously. So there's still some jiggle there, but it's nice when I put my shirt on and I don't feel like I'm getting a wedgie in my armpit because it's tighter and more firm than it was before. And then one thing I've always been self-conscious about is like for me especially is like my stomach and my thighs. And whenever I walk, like no matter what weight I am, no matter what age I've been, my thighs have always rubbed together. But for a long time, I was afraid of wearing shorts because I felt like my legs looked very, very much like cottage cheese, where I would get a lot of like the dimpling and they would jiggle a lot when I walked. But now they're actually just firm. And it's crazy because like my weight, I've stayed at the same weight, but like the composition of my body has completely changed. So my thighs are basically the same size, but it's more muscle now and it's actually toned and firm, and like my legs actually look good enough that I'm comfortable wearing shorts. And my stomach it's gone down because I felt like it used to kind of more stick out, and now it's more flat. And even like my back and in my butt, I had like rolls on my back, where like your ribs are like right above your hips. And I felt like, my butt was very dimply also, but now like the texture of the skin on my butt is smooth. So, when I went to the beach a couple of weeks ago, like I was confident wearing a bikini. And, it's like even my back, whenever I walk, I don't have that back roll because I used to be able to like feel the roll and, you sweat and you can feel it, getting stuck like in the crevices and stuff. But, I don't feel that anymore. And I feel, even when I look in the mirror, in the past, I would just walk back and forth really fast in front of the mirror because I didn't really want to see it, but now I pause and I look and I'm like, oh, I actually look good. And, I feel like a lot of my hourglass figure has come back, and, sometimes I'll stop and I'll like flex and do poses in the mirror, and I'm actually like confident in the way that I look, but it's like the fact that I'm able to eat all the food that I love, and I don't have any more like crashes throughout the day, whether it's because I haven't had enough calorie or I've had way too much sugar at once and then crashed. Like all of that stuff is gone.
Is it kind of weird to say all like together, like I'm eating over, or from the result standpoint, I literally like cellulite and dimples have gone away. My thighs are toned and firm. My stomach is flat. I'm confident in a bikini, and I have my hourglass figure again, all while eating over 2,000 calories a day, eating donuts and my favorite foods whenever I want, with zero binge eating, zero food noise.
Yeah.
Is that just kind of like weird to like
It is.
feel?
And what's even crazier about it is the fact that when I signed up, one of the things that I was nervous about you telling me, okay, all you have to do is work out 7 days a week for 2 hours a day. Like, that's not going to happen. It's just not,
No, you thought I was going to say that?
Yeah,
you thought I was going to?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I told you I have workouts that I like to do, and you're like, okay, cool, moving on. I was like, fantastic, because what I do, like on the days that I work, I walk like 10,000 steps a day at work easy, and then on my days off, sometimes I feel like doing a really heavy strength training. And then other times I want to do something, a little bit lighter, like, I don't know how to say it out loud, so I'm just going to say it. I think it's called BARRE. It's BARRE. And so there's this app that I love doing where it's like the bar workouts, and they also have like Pilates mixed into it. And if I if my body is in pain because, I've been sitting in the car forever or just for whatever reason, it's nice to be able to have a day that I can just do yoga if I want to, and then on the days where, if I don't leave the house because the weather is bad or whatever, I can still get some kind of workout in, and I'm not just like, oh, well, I was supposed to go to the gym and do all these leg presses and I don't have that machine, so I guess I'll just skip the whole workout. So it's been really nice to see all of these results, but I don't have a crazy workout regimen. I'm just moving, and like my minimum is to try to do like 4 workouts per week, but it's like one of my favorite videos that that you sent me again this week was, doing better, because there's a lot of times where it's like ideally
the power of better.
Yeah, the power of better. And that I always tell my sister that too, out when we're talking about whatever. I always tell her just reach for better, because on the days where maybe I'm depressed or it's like 1,000 degrees outside because it's Texas, or it like randomly snowed because it's Texas. So we don't leave the house if it snows out here. If it snows out
Right.
here, you stay home because, we don't have we just don't have the infrastructure for snow at all, and sometimes like my friends from out of state, they like make fun of us for that. But I think having all of these different things that kind of determine whether or not I feel like going to the gym has also played a role in, I think why I've struggled to stay consistent with other programs, so when I, express that I have workout regimens that I like to do because I have the equipment for it at home, I liked that you were like, no, you have to do this specific thing in order to lose weight. It's been very much, and then even like when I asked you about the protein, I asked you how I could get more protein in, and you didn't tell me, oh, well, you need to buy this specific brand. You need to buy that. You made me think about things in a different way where you were like, eat the things that you like to eat and try to expand on the protein in those areas. So there's times now where if I want to get if I want something like McDonald's, because I mean, we all have the cravings for McDonald's, but now instead of going and getting, a cheeseburger, nuggets, a basket of fries for myself, not to share, a soda and an ice cream, all of that just for me, not sharing this with anybody. And now, I'll get like the chicken nuggets and I'll get like a smaller fry, and I'm good with that. Or if I get like a hamburger, I think one of the tips was, get like, to get a double or a triple as opposed to just, one hamburger, because it helps you reach your protein goals if you increase the amount of meat that you have on it.
Yep. Most people go wrong in general is because they live in that extremism. And that's why I know, and why I made those, those suggestions and those specific things with you, is because I knew from the very beginning, your pattern was very all or nothing, very perfect or not at all. So that's why when it came to you had workouts you enjoyed doing, I'm like, bet, run with them. And you were like, oh, or when you were like, or I remembered you were like, what kind of meal plan are you going to have me do? And I go, we don't do meal plans.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, because at the end of the day, all of that stuff that resembled everything you did in the past, where the reason, but this is also why you love the framework concept.
Yeah.
Because the way that I view it is the difference between a hard, rigid, meal plan, is like a tightrope where if you're not perfect, you die. Whereas what I do and what we do in the program is everything is framework driven. A framework is a guardrail. But if you're driving down a windy road, you love the guardrails. Yeah. So, and if you want to hop on a tightrope, if you're not perfect, you die. So this is why everything that we do in coaching is completely framework driven. So you actually seek it as a source of groundedness and direction, not I have to be perfect or I'm going to screw up like I did when I was a kid. It's, as long as I stay between these guardrails, we're good. We're golden. Yeah. And then now fast forward, because we did it in the right order of operations, we fixed your relationship with food first, then focused on fat loss. Now that's why you're walking, talking, thriving, losing fat, not thinking about food, and effortlessly going, oh, I want a small McDonald's meal, or I want to go get a donut. And there's not even like the desire to go batshit crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause even, I think one of my biggest meal that I would always have, because it's like almost like I was following a script, was like Domino's. I love their food, and I would get like the 10 count or the 8 count wing just for me, a medium pizza also just for me, and then I would get like the chocolate lava crunch cakes, and I might share one, but more than likely they were all 3 for me also, and a bottle of Sprite.
Big benches.
Yeah, and that was after I had already eaten whatever else throughout the day, and there's times too where, because I've been tracking my calories for forever, but like I never really paid attention to my macros. So there's times where I've looked back, and it was very easy to eat, like 5,000 calories and then end up with like 50 grams of protein, because a lot of it was just like, just whatever I happened to want to eat, which was very rarely, protein focused.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. I'm curious, how do you feel like now compared to before?
I feel like physically, I feel good because, like I said, like no more sugar highs and lows, and I feel good because I'm able to work out, so I feel stronger. And then as far as like emotionally, whenever I go to events and stuff, it's really nice to be able to focus on the people around me, and I'm not as worried about food. So I actually, for a long time, I would say that I hated going to parties. I hate going out, because I'm an introverted person, which might be true to a degree, but I really think the main thing that I hated about going out, whether it was to a friend's house or just out to a restaurant, whatever, I was afraid of what food they might have there because I was very sure whatever it was, I was probably going to binge eat it. And then before I would go, I would be in my closet, taking all of my clothes out of the closet, trying on all these different outfits, and none of them fit the way I wanted them to fit. And then on top of that, I would like refuse to buy clothes that actually fit my body because I would tell myself I'm not going to stay at this size forever. So, I'm just going to keep making myself wear the small when I'm, obviously a medium or a large, and I feel like, now my clothes do fit better, but because I look at myself in the mirror and I see, okay, there is, body definition happening. There is, I look toned and I'm actually happy with my body, but I've been so conditioned to think that if I'm not in a small or a medium, I have failed, but my body, I fit into large clothes in a lot of sizes. But now whenever I look and I see at this store, I might fit a medium. And then at this store, because it's based in like Asia, I wear an extra large, and it would bother me for a long time, but when you hold the clothes up next to each other, they're the same inches, and it's like, it doesn't mean like, your body is magically huge over here where it's smaller over here. And I feel like it's made it a lot easier to look at my body objectively. And I feel like my relationship with my body is a lot better. So I feel more confident going into these spaces because now when I try on clothes, I have clothes that fit, not the clothes that I want to fit. And, even the clothes that, they didn't fit quite right. Now that I have focused on protein, so my body composition has changed. A lot of the clothes that didn't look quite right on me, they actually do fit a lot better now. And they actually do look good. And I'm confident enough in the way that I wear it and the way that I look that I'll wear them out. Whereas before I would end up with a huge pile of my nice clean clothes all over the floor, so laundry to do, when I get back from the event. Or I would just be like, hey, sorry, I'm not feeling good. I'm not showing up, and it wasn't even because it wasn't because anything happened other than the fact that I was unhappy with my body, and changing through my clothes made me remember and made me feel bad about myself. And I haven't had any incidents like that since I've, been in the program, which has been like a huge success for me.
I love that so much. How much, or I'm sorry, in what other ways that you could recall has this transformation here affected other areas in your life?
It's kind of interesting because I had a huge like revelation, maybe a month or two ago. And I'm trying to remember exactly, I don't even remember what started it. But I basically came to the realization, oh, you know what it was? Because I've been staying, my weight has stayed at about 170. And there was one day where my weight went down to 160, like 168.6 or something like that. But that 160 freaked me out. And I realized that I am afraid of being smaller, and I'm more comfortable at a larger weight. And I thought that was such an odd thing to feel, because
It's an old pattern.
Yeah, because for so long I've been wanting to lose weight and wanting, to get smaller. But then I realized that that exact thought was where the issue really was, because growing up, I just felt like there was a lot of people that, had told me to be smaller in like so many different ways. It was like there were some people that would tell me, stop laughing like that, you sound like a witch. Don't be so loud. Or it's like if you have questions and opinions that are differing from others, just, asking about it was enough to like set somebody off. So to realize that, I've been told, be quieter, stop asking so many questions, stop laughing so loud. You know what? You sound like a witch. Just stop laughing altogether. And on top of that, you're only attractive if you weigh like 120, 130 pounds. So be smaller, literally be smaller. And I feel like there's even like people that I've dated in the past where it's like they want you to fit in this box. And they want you to fit in this idea of who they want their girlfriend or spouse to be. But, I'm an individual. I might not fit those ideals. So you should go date somebody that fits those ideals. That's obviously not me, but I'm not going to make myself smaller to fit in that box. I don't belong in that box, and I feel like I've been more comfortable at a larger weight because the people that look at me and see that, I'm small, that I'm petite, that I, have diminished myself to fit in that box, it's easier to be at the bigger weight because they don't even bother, and then I realized that my being heavier was almost like my way of retaliating against all of these people that have always told me smaller is better. And it's weird because even though I would like to weigh less just because I know for the size that I am, a lighter weight would be better. And that's something that I do still want to work on over time. But, just seeing how I'm rebelling against everybody that has ever told me to be smaller. And it's almost like, I shot myself in the foot doing it.
Well, there's a double-edged sword that happens here. There's two things. This is why most people struggle so much, is because the part of like what the mind wants, it's scared of.
Yeah.
Like people go, I want to lose weight and look better naked.
Yeah.
But then when they lose weight, they go, oh, I'm getting unwanted attention, or, oh, this group of people that was controlling me, I'm appeasing them. So then we would rebel. So this is why we have to be careful, because this is why people have all these subconscious patterns that run the show. But then at the end of the day, though, even if like on paper you would like to weigh less, this is where we have to make sure we keep the main thing. Because like what we mentioned a little bit ago, like the fact that your clothes fit, your stomach is flat, cellulite's gone, your legs are toned and defined, you look great in a swimsuit, you're confident. Well, that's the thing, though, is this is why I don't believe in an ideal body weight, is because everyone's going to weigh different. And let's keep the main thing, your actual health and the way your body composition is and what you actually want to look and feel like. Because I know so many people, they'll stop drinking water and they'll drop 15 pounds overnight, but they don't look any different. But then if you look at everyone that I work with, now, let's say they maybe weigh more because of whatever muscle, genetic disposition, what have you, but their before and after pictures look like two different humans because we keep the main thing. In this way, you're also learning how to think through these things, this entire process, which is what's giving you these insights of going, oh, this is interesting. I'm able to see this pattern, or, oh, interesting, this is happening. Do I really want to go down that rabbit hole? So that's the cool part.
Yeah, because I definitely feel like, with me I just feel like with my genetics, I've always had like larger legs and larger hips.
Sure.
So that's part of why, that I think I looked it up one time, like how much I'm supposed to weigh, and it says like 120, 130. But my thing is, I've been 120 and I did not look healthy. I did not feel healthy.
Right.
There was a lot of times where I felt like my mind would be very cloudy. And like I said, I would struggle with like sugar crashes and everything. So like, even though I'm 170 and according to, some of the charts, it's not a good weight for me, I feel better than I have ever felt before. I feel healthier at this weight than I did at 120. And so I'm at a point where I'm not even worried so much about, like the inches or the number on the scale. I'm more focused on how do I feel,
what actually matters.
Yeah. Right now where I am, I feel great, and I have never felt like this good in my own skin before and had a better relationship with myself and food, so it's funny because it's one of those things where I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it, where, yes, I'm heavier than I was before, but I'm a lot healthier than I was before. So
that's huge. So another question I was wanting to ask, especially for those that are going to be listening, for you, what surprised you most being inside the program, and what made like the biggest difference for you from your perspective?
I think the thing that probably surprised me most, are you talking about as far as my results or like the program itself?
I mean, any of it, just in general, like, especially like in the process, because we know like your results are crazy, but like as far as like in the process of like the day-to-day, the achievement of those goals, what surprised you the most?
I think what surprised me the most was, I want to say how easy it was. And the things that I thought were going to be, what I thought was going to be difficult ended up being easy. And the stuff that I thought was going to be easy actually ended up being very difficult. Because the nutritional goals that you set for me, I've been able to stick to them so well. Since I've been in the program, I haven't had any more binge eating. If I go over my calorie budget, it's like maybe 400 or 500 calories max, but I'm not.
So you go maintenance.
Yeah. So I'm not in the pantry like a bear anymore. I thought it was going to take a lot longer to get that to stop, but I haven't done that since I joined the program. And I think that the hardest part of the program has been the inner work that I've needed to do, because it's like I've been to therapy before and, I've done, the inner child work, and there's times where I've worked through some very difficult things that I've gone through in my life, but seeing how it related to food, it's like I've done it, but with the way that you presented it in relation to food, it's like been on a whole other level. And I feel like I basically started therapy all over again when it comes to food, because I didn't realize how deep a lot of that stuff goes. And I didn't realize how deep a lot of those patterns were. So I feel like there was, especially at the beginning, there were several weeks where back to back I was having these huge revelations, and then it's like the next week, you ask for the check-in and you're like, what are some, things that came up? And there's something about the way that you word the questions that's almost like a trigger, because it's like, oh, I don't have that much to talk about. It's like, actually, you know what? I have a whole novel, and then there's other weeks, right? But then there's like other weeks where it's just like, oh, nothing, it was an easy week, and it's like, you were saying how you just like disrupt and shake things up and then it settles. Then you shake things up again and then it settles, and then there was times where stuff was really hectic and busy, and part of me was like, well, I don't want to do all this stuff because I have all this other stuff going on, but sticking with the journaling and like feeling my feelings and staying dedicated to doing the program, because you don't ask me to do a lot, and so it's made it easy, because when I look at it and I remember myself saying that it's not a lot. And then I look at the check-in, I'm like, I'm not doing this, I'll do it tomorrow. And then I'm like, you just said last week it wasn't a lot. Like, just sit down for 15 minutes. Can you just sit still for 15 minutes and do it? Yeah. And it's just reminding myself, like, it's not hard, it's easy. It helps me stay on track, because I have like all these crazy life changes that have happened, like with work, it went down from, where I'm like making a fourth of what I was making before, and like stuff with work is like not great, and then my family just has all of these issues that popped up like at the same time. In the past with another program, I would just be like, fuck this shit. I don't have time for this. I don't have the mental bandwidth. And for this, it's like, log your calories, log your protein, eat your favorite food. I'm never going to say no to eat your favorite food. Like, I'm going to do it every single day, and so having,
but like, you're missing though, amongst all that, the inner work to regulate yourself amongst all the stress in the world. Because this is why I always tell people, if your program does not have internal regulation and nervous system work, that's why you've been able to stick to this so well during the worst chaos of work stuff, family stuff, life stuff, throwing you curveballs every day, is because the internal work is the glue that holds everything together when it comes to our behavior. And that's why that's so important.
Yeah, because I feel like before the program, there's some stuff that I have dealt with that still wouldn't have been dealt with, and there are like the situations that's happening, like my grandparents both have dementia, and, to see them both declining the way that they are in the past, it would have set me off into like a horrible spiral. But now with all of the inner work that I'm doing, when I wake up in the mornings, like before I get out of bed, I'm sitting there and like with my eyes closed, okay, how are we feeling today? And I just, before I get out of bed, I check in with myself. And if I feel those intense feelings coming up, it's easy to recognize that I need to sit down and feel these feelings, and without intention and without judgment, because there's a lot of times where I feel like I've been hard on myself just for having feelings, and the feelings are valid, but because I was judging myself for having feelings. I wasn't working through them. And so instead of it going away, it just compiled. And it, on top of that, I also feel bad about my weight, and it's just kind of, always sitting at the top of problems, and now it's like, I have, since I do the inner work, it's carried into everything, not just my relationship with food. So everything is just gotten to be like, things haven't gotten easier, but they've gotten easier to manage. They've gotten easier to deal with.
You've gotten stronger.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
That was a TED talk. That was like, that was not Anna. Like, who is this? Like, that was not you just a few short months ago. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Final question, kind of a stereotypical question. What would you say to the person listening to this who is on the fence but considering joining? What would you say to that person?
If you're considering joining, you should just take the leap of faith and at least try it. Because if you're even considering joining, that means that there is something that you have heard in this, either in the podcast or somewhere in the program where it's speaking to you. And I feel like if something is resonating with you, that means that there might be, puzzle pieces that you're missing that Jared can help you find. Like, all of the information is out there. We can find all of the information we want, but to get the individual puzzle piece that you're missing to make things fit and to make things work, it's just so much easier if you join the program, honestly, because I'm sure I could have figured out all of this stuff on my own over the course of the next 10 years. But there's no way that I would have been able to pull all of this stuff together over the course of this last 6 months. Like, just go for it and, just give it a couple of months. And sometimes it might be kind of hard and you might think this is stupid. Just trust the process, because I mean, honestly, that's the best advice that I can give, because like I said, if it's resonating at all, there's obviously some part of you that it's speaking to on some level. And I think following that, like looking for what resonates and, because it's like you've said before, your podcasts and stuff, they are great. But when you have the personalized help that's made specifically for your exact question, you find the answer so much easier with someone helping you along the way.
I love that. I appreciate that. That's super kind of you. This has been great, Anna. Like, I think your story is going to help so many people. So I really, really appreciate you doing this. Thank you again.
Oh, of course. Thank you for all of your help. Because like I said, I think I've only been doing it for 6 months, and I already feel, like a vastly different person when it comes to just, I would say, feelings in general.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. And that is it. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the podcast. Now, if you're listening to this going, oh my gosh, Anna is me. Anna has my story, the same struggles, and has done everything I want to do. And if you're like Anna and tired of going through this journey on your own and trial and erroring it for the next 10 years of your life, you can go through the same program that Anna did. Just shoot me a message on Instagram and just say the word help, and I'll know you're coming from this podcast episode. And then I'll ask you a few questions to make sure it's even the right fit. Shoot me a message on Instagram at @RealJaredHamilton. Just say the word help, and then we'll go from there. Otherwise, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you next week.